Okay, so today we are going to talk about um, so, um, the condition of slaves. So, yeah, talking about this isn't a good part of American history. It's definitely a bad part of American history. If you think back to part one of this lesson, I explained there's lots of bad parts about American history, but that doesn't mean that we don't talk about it. So that's what we've been doing these couple of past three videos. This past lesson, we've been talking about the King Cotton. We've been talking about King Cotton and how that impacted um, impacted the South. So the conditions in which slaves existed in the 19th century varied from region to region, and even from house to house. Why slave owners recognized the value of slaves as human capital, since by 1860 slaves were worth approximately $1,800 each. As such, while most slaves travailed in the fields cultivating crops, dangerous work such as roof repair was often hired out to more expendable labor sources. Most slaves resided in the Deep South, an area stretching from South Carolina and Georgia to Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. This region became known as the Black Belt because of the abundance of slaves there. Hard work was a mainstay of the slave lifestyle. Since slaves did not earn wages like other workers, their source of motivation was an overseer, often another slave who had been given increased responsibility, who wielded a whip to flog the unproductive and inefficient laborers. Physically, emotionally, and legally, slaves were reduced to property, given no civil or political rights. So basically, what we are seeing here is in the South, slaves equaled property. Slaves equaled property in this, and given no rights. Given no that was the conditions of slaves, treated as property. Slaves did not even have the right to legally enter into marriage, although many slave owners allowed their slaves to participate in unionizing ceremonies and to live as married couples. Most slaves practiced some form of religion, usually a hybrid faith mix from Christian and African elements. They often incorporated the African responsorial system of punctuating sermons with verbal agreement. Most slave children in the Deep South lived in two-parent households where forced separation did not happen very often. Forced separation typically occurred when a slave owner died or encountered financial difficulties. In these situations, his slaves were often sent to auction. Most auctions were multi-purpose events, selling humans alongside cattle and horses. So that regulated, that put slaves in the same boat as cattle. Guys, this was a truly dark period of American history. Okay. No regard was given to keeping families together at these auctions. In fact, it was rare that families who came to auction together stayed together. These terrible auctions, along with the appalling conditions most slaves dealt with daily, fed the growing abolitionist movement. The dispute over slavery would eventually be resolved, but not before the country turned on itself in civil warfare. So this basically is saying that that this won't change until the Civil War. This won't change until the Civil War. That's it for this King Cotton lesson. I hope you guys learned a lot. See you guys in the next few lessons.